And welcome back to the Touchline Talk show. We're going to do some women's soccer check-in stuff here with so many important tournaments going on simultaneously. First, haven't talked about the U.S. women's national team in a little bit, so I wanted to do that. 1-0 win over Mexico to close out the group stage of the CONCACAF W Championship. Heading into this game, it was almost a guarantee the U.S. was going to win the group. They would win the group with a draw. Ended up getting all 3 points to finish a perfect 3-0 in the group stage. It was not a pretty performance. This was the Mexico team, at least I expected to show up from the beginning of this tournament. I always had this game circled as the first one where I really felt like we were going to have any chance of learning something about where this U.S. team is at. And then Mexico promptly went and lost their first 2 group stage games. But they showed up against the U.S. and deserve an immense amount of credit for the performance they put in. So this was definitely the best test the U.S. has had so far. The goal comes in the dying minutes of the game. I'm still surprised it stood. It looked like, to me, Emily Sonnet was offside. And the amount of goals that have gotten disallowed in those kind of situations is incredible to me. It just seems like we don't take clear and obvious error literally. So I have stopped trying. I've given up on that fight. In my head, that was not a clear and obvious error. But based on all of the past experience we have here, all the precedent, I was surprised Christy Munoz' goal stood. But it did. The ball gets chipped in, Sonnet sends it toward goal. It sort of pops up in the air, and Christy Munoz bunkles it over the line with her knee and gets the U.S. all 3 points. Only a few truly notable moments in this game. Like I said, it was not a good performance, particularly going forward. Midge Purce hits the post in the 15th minute, and so you start thinking, okay, maybe they've got something going offensively. And it kind of died out. Then Midge Purce had a phenomenal run at the end of the first half. She picked the ball up near midfield, just completely what's the word I'm looking for here? Dismissed the first Mexican defender and then blew by the second. I mean, just nobody could stay in front of her. And so she gets to the end line, she cuts it back in, it falls to Lindsay Horan, who has a really good, clean look at goal and just doesn't get much on the shot. And then 72nd or so minute, don't remember off the top of my head if that was exactly when it was, Mexico picks up the red card for a nasty challenge on Rose Lavelle's ankle. But then Mexico felt more dangerous after the red card, which is, to me, the biggest concern out of all of this. In no way, shape, or form should a team playing with 10 and a team that is not among the world's very best be able to, and now it's not like Mexico came all that close to scoring, but in a game that was tied at that point, it felt as balanced as it had at just about any point in the game, and there is no way that should have happened. But ultimately, Christy Munoz steps up, gets the winner, and the U.S. prevail. And after these shaky performances, I've seen plenty of, we want the old USWNT back, concerns about the attack. And here's what I would say to that. First of all, Vlatko Andonovski is correct when he said, we are not ready for the World Cup now. To me, that has become abundantly clear so far in this tournament. And in the build-up games to Colombia. Because being the best team in CONCACAF, which Canada will have something to say about that still, and being ready for a World Cup are two different things. It is one of the challenges that will always come with being in this qualifying region. There is a very good Mexican team on the men's side, a fairly good one on the women's side, and now Canada, both on the men's and women's side, is providing very good opposition as well. But other than that, you are hard-pressed to be going up against the teams that are ultimately your equals or superiors when it gets to the World Cup. The kind of teams you're going to see in the knockout round specifically. So that's part of this. The other thing is, we also need to remember that this team is currently breaking in 2 new center backs. Now, only one of them is typically starting at a time. One of them would start, I would expect, it's going to be Alana Cook and Becky Sauerbrunn in a potential championship game. So it's not like you're starting 2 brand new center backs. But you have 2 center backs playing key roles in this tournament who are, relatively speaking, new. You're bringing in a brand new left back who's going to be your starter for the next decade. Julie Ertz is not available, so Andy Sullivan is playing a much more important role than she ever has before as that holding midfielder. And yes, I know Mal Pugh's been around this team for a long time, despite the fact she's still super young because she broke in at such a young age. But she has never carried this kind of responsibility, and Sophia Smith is just starting her international career. Those are now key players for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them are theoretically starters if everybody is healthy and you've got a must-win game. This is a new era. It is going to take time. This is not the well-oiled machine where you had, an inner prime Alex Morgan, plus Megan Rapinoe, who was still at the edge of her prime, plus Rose Lavelle and Lindsay Horan coming through, plus Julie Ertz, plus all this experience at center back, plus Kelly O'Hara. You can go down the list, right? There was kind of this group that had been together for the last 4 to 8 years, and now we're getting into that next rendition. Megan Rapinoe is playing exclusively off the bench pretty much, at least for the purposes of a preferred 11. She is going to be on the bench. It was unclear whether Alex Morgan was really going to be the number 9, and now Ashley Hatch is hurt, so Alex Morgan is going to be the number 9, and has been playing well, so she's helping her case in that sense as well. But this is not the best this team is going to look, because this team is just getting used to each other. Additionally, the other point I will make is I would be more concerned about this team if the defense was shaky. The defense has been rock solid all tournament long. Every center back that's went out there has been very, very good. Kelly O'Hara's been good. Emily Sonnet's been good. I'm a huge Emily Fox fan. You have never been concerned about the back line. Now, of course, the question is, okay, what happens when you go up against better competition? You saw Mexico was able to give them a little bit more trouble, but they still didn't come close to scoring a goal. And then you take that and you look at what is happening at the Euros. And now there are a couple teams in particular we're going to get to in a little bit here that have been very, very good defensively. But Norway just gave up 8 goals in a game. The Netherlands have had some struggles defensively. And throughout qualifying, they just have struggled defensively. You look at what happened to Sweden. No, more Netherlands than Sweden, but you get the point. There have been some shaky defensive performances by teams that are supposed to be right there with the U.S. competing to be the best team in the world. Again, they're playing better opposition because there's so much more depth in Europe. But there are teams that can be got at defensively, and right now it does not look like the United States is one of them. So offensive problems can be fixed. This team is super talented. There's so many options going forward. It's just going to take some time. The other part of this that needs to be remembered is the simple reality that the rest of the world is catching up to the U.S. It is simply not fair to expect this team to dominate the way they've been expected to for the past decade or so. Just go look at that list that I referenced when we were talking before the Euros that ESPN put together. It was a poll. Vlatko Andonovski voted, but it was a lot of also some European journalists. They got a whole collection of people. Europe does not think incredibly highly of this U.S. team right now. I believe Katerina Macario was the highest ranked U.S. player at 6. And then the next one wasn't for a while. I could be wrong on that, but it was something in that ballpark. There is very much a belief, at least among some people, and I saw Grant Wall talk to Alex Morgan about this, that these top European teams are better than the U.S. I'm not there yet. That's why I'm so excited about this World Cup we've got coming next year. But there does need to be an acknowledgement that we are getting very close, if we're not already there, to this idea of there is not one clear favorite entering a tournament. There are 5+ teams that could win a World Cup. Not 2, 3, 4 maybe. And the rest of the teams in CONCACAF are getting better. So you're not going to waltz to a bunch of 5-0 wins anymore. So there is plenty of time to build this thing toward the World Cup. Remember, this is a young team. Remember, everybody else is getting better. And now the job is take care of the semifinals. Hopefully you get a matchup with Canada. And then, based on that game, we can start talking if we need to reconsider anything I just said. Speaking of the Euros, England did a thing, a historic thing. 8-0 over Norway, most lopsided game in the history of the Euros, men's or women's, which is remarkable in and of itself. And then the fact that it was against Norway, who certainly was supposed to be the second best team in that group, who looked better than England game 1, who have 2 of the best 5 to 10 players in the world, depending on who you're asking. And, I mean, England just ripped them apart. It was incredible how much open space there was. Beth Mead gets her hat trick. She is playing out of her mind right now. She has been just sensational. Ellen White scores twice, so now your striker is in form, as if they needed another attacking player playing really well with what you've gotten from Fran Kirby and Lauren Hemp and Beth Mead. That team that showed up in Game 2 is the clear favorite in this tournament. I did not think we were going to be talking about that. I said the opposite thing on Monday in the weekend roundup, that I got no clue what happens next. None of these teams have been uber impressive. There's one that now we've seen them play a second game I'm also feeling very confident in. We're going to talk about them next. But if England plays that way, that's your team to beat. That was not the team that showed up in Game 1, though. I don't know if that was and this is what we're going to have to learn once we get to the knockout rounds, if that was oh my goodness, we're playing at a Euros where we might actually win at home, or if that was this game against Norway, for whatever reason, was just the most bizarre aberration in the history of the Euros, and we're going to get back more to the point where it was a gritty 1-0 they had to really just kind of drag out. So we'll see. But I was looking for somebody to make a statement and sort of announce their arrival as every bit as good as advertised. England certainly did that and then some with what they did to Norway. The other team that I've been really impressed with is Germany. Germany got a 2-0 win over Spain, albeit, yes, a depleted Spain, but still a very good Spain. And, goalkeeping mistake leads to the first goal. It was just not a good day for Spain, but Germany capitalized. They now have a 6-0 combined scoreline in their first 2 games. Both opponents are ranked in the top 15 of the FIFA Women's World Rankings. Top 15. Their defense has been rock solid. I mentioned both England and Germany have looked really, really good at the back. The midfield, particularly the two attacking midfielders, have been sensational. The wingers have also been really productive, and you're getting additional production from that number 9 position. There is just no hole to poke in this team right now. Everybody is playing at a high level. You feel good about every single part of the field. And for Spain, there's always going to be an asterisk to this tournament because you don't have Jennifer Hermoso and Alexia Putellas. But at some point, you've got to get over this mental hurdle and really, if this team, and I'm sort of throwing Barcelona in there with the Spanish national team, obviously they're two different things, but they're so intertwined because of the roster similarities. If this group of players is truly the best in the world and superior to everybody else in a clear way that is indisputable, at some point they need to show it. Because one Champions League against a Chelsea team that hadn't been there before is not enough. You've obviously got plenty of time to continue to grow in this, both club and internationally. But this is quickly turning into another incredibly disappointing showing for this group of players. No need to panic. Most of that was self-inflicted against Germany. They can certainly do much better. But it's to the point where we got to start wondering kind of what the perception, the narrative surrounding this team is going to be exiting this tournament, whether that is sooner than we thought, in the semifinals, in the quarterfinals, whatever it might be. There's a very interesting conversation to be had about Spain. Okay, so I want to run through these groups real quick to sort of set the stage for what's going to happen next, because we've got some very interesting things that are happening here. So here is Group A right now. Of course, England would have to do something horrifically bad to end up anywhere other than first place in this group. And now Norway is staring at a very real possibility of exiting this tournament in the group stage. They have work to do against Austria because of that goal difference, because of the fact that Austria really gave England issues. Now, the good news is you got that head-to-head in that final game. So if you win, you're going through. But Norway has to, look at that goal difference. That is not what this was supposed to look like heading into the final game. Here's Group B, highlighted how impressed I've been by Germany. And Spain, again, similar position to Norway. Denmark is the final game for Spain. So you do have the benefit of, Germany destroyed Denmark. Spain hung in there better against Germany, so you've got that goal difference edge. But you got to take care of business in this final game, or you're going home in the group stage too. This tournament it's absolutely fascinating the way the schedule played out and the way the results have played out. That because you could have gone through and picked, and you said, okay, there's a clear, especially Group A, clear 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe you argue Norway's better than England, but I don't think many people were doing that. So you go, can Austria find a way? Well, Austria has the opportunity. Same thing with this group. I mentioned it before. 3 of the top 15 teams in the world. Germany and Spain, clear 1, 2. How is that going to play out? Can Denmark play spoiler? Denmark absolutely has that opportunity when they get Spain in the final group stage game. Then we go to Group C. And, the Netherlands tie Sweden. They both take care of business in less convincing fashion. So they are tied atop the group and are in very good position to both go through as expected. Hannah Bennison came off the bench and scored a screamer to give Sweden a win over Switzerland. Switzerland fought tooth and nail. Very, very admirable performance by the Swiss. And Benison just, it was, you just don't see a ball struck that cleanly very often. It was a rocket. And then the Netherlands, albeit a banged up Netherlands, go up 2-0 early, then give up 2 goals, and then find a winner in the second half to get the 3-2 win over Portugal without Vivian Miedema, who tested positive for COVID-19, unfortunately, to add to the injuries they've already suffered. They are just depleted, and it's a real shame because they're very, very good, and I want to see them at full strength, obviously, heading into the later rounds of this tournament. Maybe they'll get closer. They should get Miedema back at some point. We'll see how serious the injuries are. But for the meantime, they are down key players, but are in very, very good position. Something would have to go pretty bad for them not to at least get through, and the way the group stage has gone for them, I think that's about all you can ask. So nothing surprising in Group C. And then we got Group D, the only group who has not played that second game yet. France, as I mentioned, very, very impressive win over Italy. France, clearly the best team in this group, so far have showed it. There's an argument they've been the most impressive team so far. I want to see them do it against better competition before I jump to that conclusion. But that is where things stand in Group D.